Welcome to Sustainability Marketing, Lecture 6. In this lecture, we will talk about sustainability marketing strategies. In the first episode, I will talk about the theory of sustainability marketing strategies. There are two learning objectives. The first one is to explain how ecological and social problems translate into market and marketing issues. And the second one is to describe the major steps involved in developing sustainability marketing strategies. The episode 1 is structured as follows. First, I will give an introduction to sustainability marketing strategies, and then we will cover the major steps in developing a sustainability marketing strategy, including the screening of sustainability issues and actors, segmenting sustainability markets, introducing sustainability innovations to the market, positioning sustainable products, and finally, partnering with sustainability stakeholders. The key questions regarding sustainability marketing strategies are three. The first one is, where do you offer your sustainability products and services? Which are the markets? These are questions of segmenting and targeting. The second one is, when do you introduce the new sustainable products and services? These are questions of timing, sustainability marketing. And the third one is, how do you position sustainable products and services? Which role do social and ecological attributes play in communications? These are questions of positioning sustainable products and services. Here you see the major steps in developing sustainability marketing strategies. The first one is screening sustainability issues and actors, segmenting sustainability markets, introducing sustainability innovations to the market, positioning sustainable products, and partnering with sustainability stakeholders. Let's go through them. Screening sustainability issues and actors. Here you see a kind of model. You see the company in the middle, and then you see the so-called micro-environment or the task environment, including market actors, political actors, and public actors. The different kind of stakeholders the company interacts with. And then you see the broader picture, the macro environment, including the natural, demographic, socio-cultural, technological, political, and economic environments. For reasons of time, I will cover the specific task environment here in this lecture. The first one would be market actors, rather important in the context of marketing, of course. When you think of manufacturing companies, there are two types of customers. The first one would be the end user or the consumer, the different kind of households. And the second one would be the intermediaries, the retailers. Especially in the last 10 years or so, conventional retailers in North America and in Western Europe have played a great role in diffusing new sustainable products and services. They are the so-called ecological and social gatekeepers or diffusion agents. Many of them, like ICA in Sweden, for example, or Albert Heijn in the Netherlands, Rewe in Germany, or Miko and Coop in Switzerland, Whole Foods Market in the United States, they introduced organic food products and made it accessible to a greater customer group. So retailers, especially conventional retailers, large retail chains, they play a very important role in this context. Let's move on to suppliers. As we have already seen in the previous lecture, suppliers play a great role in the context of textiles and apparel. Here are many social and environmental issues which have to be tackled. So manufacturing companies or design companies like Nike, for example, or Gap, they have to take care of their suppliers as well and take responsibility to the suppliers as well. Then there are competitors. Take, for example, Henkel. Henkel is a consumer goods company, mainly in the area of daily goods, fast-moving consumer goods. Take, for example, their washing detergent. They introduced the first phosphate-free washing detergent in the late 1980s in Germany and all over Europe. They were the first ones to do so. The other companies had to follow suit due to the success of their new product. So competition and competitors really influence the sustainability issues as well. And then there are shareholders. Some shareholders are willing to sacrifice the return on investment and invest in sustainability pioneers and leaders. But the large majority of shareholders, they want a decent or the maximum earnings in terms of dividends and share increases. However, a recent study, an authoritative study, conducted by the Harvard Business School and the London Business School shows that sustainability leaders outperform other companies which are less sustainable. So we might say investing in sustainability pioneers and leaders really pays off. These market actors influence the companies and their strategies. So do the public actors, including the media, especially the mass media like television, like print media, and like radio. But also, ever since the turn of the century, online media has become really important. And there's a two-sided relationship between media, online media on the one hand, and the business on the other. On the one hand, media criticizes business. Media comes up with social and environmental issues, attacking companies, or at least informing the public about it. And yet, on the other side, the online media is dependent on business because they advertise in television, they advertise in the radio and in print media. So it's a kind of two-sided relationship, and on the one hand, media attacks companies, on the other hand, they don't want to jeopardize their business, their advertising business. Then there are different kinds of interest groups, the so-called NGOs, non-governmental organizations. They range from global NGOs to local NGOs. So, for example, a global NGO is the WWF, or Greenpeace, which are well-known NGOs and also highly credible. And they also range from single issue to multiple issues. So, for example, the Fair Trade organization mainly focus on the single issue of fair trade and social issues, whereas other NGOs cover a multiple range of different kind of issues. Then there are local communities. Especially in a globalized world, you might think that local communities or local actors do not matter anymore. Well, when it comes to manufacturing, they do. And in the digital age, communities have a whole new meaning. Take for example, brand communities. Brand communities, consumers which gather in the internet and talk about the brands they love or the brands they hate, they criticize. So these kind of communities really matter for sustainability marketing, especially brand communities. And besides market actors and public actors, we have political actors, including the government and the administration. The government making regulations and the administration setting forth these, implementing these regulations. There are different kind of instruments the government could use to influence companies in terms of, or in the context of sustainability. Command and control, for example. They could simply tell the companies to do something, for example, to cut emissions, or to have a safe working place, or to have a minimum wage for workers. They could set up financial measures, so for example, incentives to develop new sustainable products, or they could have promotions of industry self-regulation, for example, labels to indicate consumers certain kind of social and ecological attributes, like the MSC, the Marine Stewardship Council. It's a regulation or a label for sustainable fishery. In lecture 3, we have already talked about different kind of social and ecological problems. The question is, how do these social and ecological issues come up? How do they rise? Durns in 1972 and Dillick in 1990 suggest a certain model, the so-called issue attention cycle. On the horizontal, we see the time and different stages, and on the vertical dimension, we see the prominence, the attention which is paid, which is attached to the different kind of social and environmental issues. As you can see, every problem or issue runs through different stages according to the empirical studies. The first stage would be the pre-problem. In this stage, the social and ecological issue has to be researched. It has to be, or a scientist would find out about the problem. In the second stage, the mass media takes up the problem. There's a lot talk about it, sometimes even enthusiasm to tackle the issue. Politicians would comment on it. Political parties would deal with it. And then they would try to find a solution to the problem until they realize the cost to tackle the issue, to solve the issue. So later on, the problem and the interest in the issue declines. Let's take the example of climate change and relate it to the issue attention cycle. It was first discovered in the 1960s and 1970s by scientists that there is a rising level of CO2 emissions. So this was the first stage. And later on, some scientists suggested that the rising level of CO2 emissions might be correlated to the rising temperature, the global warming. That had a great coverage in the mass media in the 1980s and the early 1990s. So the attention in the issue rose dramatically. Until 1997, when politicians met at an international conference in Kyoto, in Japan, and they agreed on an environmental treaty to reduce the CO2 emissions. So the interest in the issue declined again. And yet, there was a treaty, there were political institutions taking care of it. Later on, there was another increase in attention when the former US Vice President Al Gore went on tour and telling an inconvenient truth, a nice documentary about climate change. So in 2006 and 2007, the issue of climate change rose to new levels. It got a lot of attention. It has to be seen how it will be treated in the future. The environmental treaty of Kyoto will run out soon, and there's no other treaty which will follow for now. The question is, will CO2 emissions become a price tag? The European Union suggests to do so, especially in the case of the automobile industry. Let's have a look at that. If social and ecological problems become an issue, if they get media attention, the question is, how does it turn into market and marketing issues? Basically, there are two different ways. The first one would be indirect sustainability marketing processes. So, as mentioned before, as described before in the issue attention cycle, the social and ecological issues are taken up by the scientists, they are covered in the media and discussed in the public and by politicians, and until politicians come up with a treaty or some kind of regulation to put a price tag on it and make it an issue of the market, or to have an incentive to develop new sustainable products and services. So the European Union, for example, put a price tag on CO2 emissions by cars. From 2015 onwards, every new car will be charged emitting more than 130 grams per kilometer. If they go beyond that, they have to pay a kind of fine. So they put a price tag on that. This is an example for indirect sustainability marketing processes, going through the public, the political side, entering the market. There's another way, which is the direct sustainability marketing processes. when issues are taken up by the public, by the media, and they enter the market right away. Take, for example, Nike in the 1990s. There was the issue of treatment of workers in third world countries or in so-called sweatshops. And there was a huge demonstration in New York City in front of the Nike stores, claiming and accusing Nike for the bad social environment and working environment in the case of their suppliers. First, they didn't want anything to do with it. Later, it really influenced their revenues and their image, their brand. So they started doing something about it. They embraced the idea of corporate social responsibility. So you might say, we have a demonstration, the mass media attacking the brand, and it became directly from the public an issue for the market, especially the well-known brand of Nike. Let's move on to the second step of developing sustainability marketing strategies. That is segmenting sustainability markets. Generally, there are 4 different criteria for segmenting a market: geographic, demographic, behavioral, and psychographic. In our context of sustainability marketing, the psychographic criteria plays an important role. Based on psychographic criteria, which means the personality and the lifestyle of a person, what he thinks and how he behaves, based on that, we can identify the so-called LOHAS. Do you remember what LOHAS stand for? It's the term we covered in lecture 4. It stands for lifestyle of health and sustainability. It's a buzzword coined in 1999 encompassing health, environment, social justice, and personal development. It is estimated that there are around about 40 million consumers in the United States which belong to the group of LOHAS. It is also estimated that the market of LOHAS is around about $290 billion US. And there is great evidence or empirical evidence showing that LOHAS exist all over the world. There are at least 20 different LOHAS studies in different countries like Germany, France, the Netherlands, New Zealand, and so on and so forth, showing that LOHAS account for 5 to 10, sometimes even 20% of the national population. So it's a growing, very important market segment, and they are willing to pay a higher price for social and ecological value added. May it be in the food area, may it be in the non-food area. There's another segment, the so-called LOBOS. Do you remember this key term? Do you know what it stands for? It means lifestyle of voluntary simplicity. These are people living a simple life and working less. For a number of reasons. Some want to reduce stress, others do it for reasons of health, or they want to have more leisure time with their friends and families. but it's still a small segment, but it's increasing as well, especially in these turbulent times. This is another segment sustainability marketers have to think of and target how to enhance a simple life. The third step of developing a sustainability marketing strategy is to introduce sustainability innovations to the market. There are 4 different types of sustainability innovations, according to the knowledge and according to the application. If you have existing knowledge and existing applications, we talk about incremental improvements in terms of social and environmental issues. If we have new knowledge, it's the development of new alternative technologies as compared to the established technologies. If you have existing knowledge and new applications, we talk about the creation of novel products and service niches. And finally, if you have new knowledge and new application, the co-evolution of new sustainable systems. Let's have a look at the 4 different types in the context of cars and mobility. The first type would be incremental improvements. If you have new eco-efficient cars, they still have old technologies, established technologies. These are cars run or powered by internal combustion engines. And yet, during the last couple of years, they improved their eco-efficiency tremendously. That means they use less gasoline for the same kind of mileage. The second type would be alternative technologies. Especially in the car industry, we have a lot of new alternative technologies coming up. Hybrid cars like the Toyota Prius has been introduced 12 years ago, in 2000. Nowadays, in 2012, there are a lot of electric cars coming up. With these new clean engines and technologies encompass new knowledge and markets. Then we have the third type of sustainability innovations, novel products and service niches. Car sharing, for example. We will come back to that in lecture 7. And then finally we have the co-evolution of new systems, sustainable mobility, where we have different modes of transportation, including the bicycle, including the tram, including public transportations like the train, and also including the car. And maybe connected with smartphones. And wherever you are, or depending on the situations, you might take one form or the other, although you might not have the need to own a car. So these are new forms of sustainable mobility. When you introduce new sustainable products and services, we talk about innovation. The opposite of innovation is exnovation. What does that mean? It means to take away some products from the market. So if you introduce new sustainable products, you should at the same pace try to get rid, to take away old products from the market. When should you introduce new sustainable products? That is a question of timing. And there are two different market entry barriers which have to be considered. The first one are primary consumer related. The second one, competitor related sustainability innovations. Consumer related means that consumers don't know about it yet. Take, for example, organic food products. In 1993, Coop, one of the largest retailers in Switzerland, they introduced a large assortment of organic food products. At that period of time, consumers didn't know about it. They didn't know what organic agriculture means, and they didn't know about the BAT, the label for organic agriculture. They didn't know whether it tastes, what the advantages are, and so on and so forth. So in the first couple of years, Coop had to inform consumers and sensitize them to the problems in conventional agriculture. And the advantages, the ecological advantages for organic agriculture or of organic agriculture, and the consumer benefits for themselves. As they informed consumers, these consumer-related barriers went down. Later on, Migros, the number 2 in the Swiss retail market, they introduced Migros Bio. They mainly had to fight secondary competitor-related market entry barriers. At that time, the Coop Natura plan and their organic assortment was well known in the Swiss population. And they also had a very good reputation. So a high recognition and a high image. And these were the entry barriers Migros had to fight. At that time, consumers already knew about organic food products and their advantages. So, to cut a long story short, you can be either too early or you can be too late. You should try to be somewhere in the middle. Of course, it is very difficult to determine the critical moment of entry. Let's move on to another major step of developing a sustainability marketing strategy, positioning sustainable products. There are two key questions. The first one, if sustainable products have a competitive advantage over conventional offerings, should it be communicated to the customer? And the second one, which role does the social and ecological value added play in communication related to traditional purchasing criteria such as performance and price? Generally, there are 4 options of positioning sustainable products and services. To have a very strong emphasis and focus on social and ecological attributes. The second one would be to have an equal emphasis on social and ecological attributes in relation to performance and price. The third one would be to consider social and ecological attributes as an integral part of performance and quality. And the fourth one would be to refrain from it altogether, to communicate social and ecological issues not at all. Here we see the focus. On the vertical dimension we have performance and price. On the horizontal dimension we have the social ecological aspects and attributes which play a great role in positioning the product and and in positioning the product and in communicating the social and ecological benefits. The first generation of sustainable products and services in the 1990s and the 1980s stressed social and ecological aspects. They target a rather micro niche, a very small niche of alternatives which were willing to pay a higher price and which were willing to sacrifice performance of a product. So these were the consumers which were willing to go to alternative retailers, buy coffee with a bitter taste, or buy washing detergent which didn't wash properly for reasons of ecological attributes. They suffered from sustainability marketing myopia, something we will cover in the next lecture, in lecture 7. The second positioning would be to put equal emphasis on social ecological aspects, to communicate social and ecological aspects in relation to performance and price. When we think about car sharing, nowadays they still communicate the ecological advantage of car sharing, and yet at the same time they stress the point that it is rather inexpensive as compared to owning a car on your own, and that's a great performance, that it's very convenient to have a variety of cars for different kind of situations. The third option would be to consider social and ecological problems as an integral part of performance or quality. Take, for example, many brands nowadays, including Unilever, for example, or Nestle, or Nespresso. Many corporate and product brands, leading brands, include social and ecological aspects as part of their performance. Take another example, Starbucks. They have fair trade coffee, organic coffee as part of their arrangements. And finally, the fourth option would be to refrain from communicating social and ecological issues altogether. So you still stress performance and price, like in the case of IKEA, the Swedish retailer. They, or H&M, both of them integrate social and environmental issues into their daily life and activities, into the brand, but they don't communicate it at all, except for some sustainability reports, but not necessarily to the customer. Let's go on and talk about the partnering with sustainability stakeholders. The fifth and final step of developing a sustainability marketing strategy. As we have already discussed in lecture 2, here you see the different kind of stakeholders of a company. It's a model based on Freeman, 1984. He lists suppliers, competitors, customers, shareholders as market stakeholders. He also mentions media and pressure groups as public stakeholders and the government as a political stakeholder. How can you partner with these stakeholders in the context of sustainability marketing and innovation? We talk about open sustainability innovation. It means opening up the company, especially research and development, and involving different kind of stakeholders into the development process of sustainable products and services. Take, for example, the $300 house challenge. In many countries of the world, people hardly have enough money to eat and for shelter. So it's a real challenge for them to have a house. That's why a Harvard professor came up with the idea of a 300 house challenge. And in the process of innovation, they set up a challenge, a design challenge. So they asked the brightest designers and architects all over the world in an open platform, in an online platform, sponsored by Ingersoll Rand, a construction company. They asked the designers all over the world to come up with prototypes and ideas for a sustainable house costing no more than $300 US. Here you have the winners, the Open Design Challenge winners, and they came up with different ideas. In the next step of this innovation, they follow up these prototypes. They gather together all over the world with the winners, discussing the brightest ideas in innovation workshops to come up with a solution. So it's still in process. It's set up in 2 different pilot projects in different regions of the world. And hopefully, sometime it will be possible to introduce new sustainable houses costing no more than $300 US to different parts of the world. But it's a good example for an open sustainability innovation, where you have different kind of companies and stakeholders interacting with each other, solving a major social issue. Another possibility would be open sustainability marketing. It means opening up the company, especially its marketing, and involving different kinds of stakeholders into the development process of marketing sustainable products and services. Let's take, for example, Procter & Gamble and the product Tide Cold Water. Tide is a washing detergent, the #1 in the North American washing detergent market. And in 2000, they introduced Tide Cold Water, which performs highly at lower temperatures, like 20 degrees. In the beginning, in the first couple of years, they did conventional advertising, but they didn't succeed at all. Consumers were very hesitant to change their washing habits. So later on, in 2005, they decided to change their strategy, to open up their sustainability marketing. So they decided to collaborate with the Alliance to Save Energy in the United States, with the WWF in France, and with the Energy Saving Trust in Great Britain to introduce Tide Cold Water and get credibility and make consumers change their washing behavior. And slowly and surely they managed to do so, and the brand succeeded, as well as the behavior of consumers changed. So these are the different steps of developing a sustainability marketing strategy. Here are the review and discussion questions. What are the 5 steps involved in developing a sustainability marketing strategy? Briefly describe each stage. And second, what role does energy efficiency of household appliances play in your country? Analyze how energy consumption of household appliances was transformed from an ecological problem to an issue of markets and marketing. Here are the references, pages 137 to 165 in our textbook. And then the seminal work, the classic paper by Downs, Up and Down with Ecology, the issue attention cycle. And finally, the interesting article by Driscoll and Sterick talking about the different stakeholders in the context of the environment. Thank you very much for listening, and bye for now.